I think it was a fair point. I think if you asked them, they would say we probably didn't deserve to lose, but we probably didn't deserve to win neither. The message I've given to the players in there that I think it was important that we didn't lose tonight. I think it was important that we backed up 2 wins with at least a point, and we're chipping away as we have done all season. I think the level of consistency has been great in that sense, well beyond expectations in terms of when we've been able to follow up losses with draws or wins. And I think at this stage of the season we need to go beyond what we've done so far this year in terms of stringing draws and wins together in quick succession without drop points. But I think in the grand scheme of things tonight, that's a good point against a very good team. And as you'll have picked up on, that's a team that has spent big money over the course of this window. They've got a lot of options. They've got a lot of players on that top line that can really hurt you. And I feel like it's a really awkward game against Portland every time we play against them, and it's always very close, always very cagey, and in an instant the forwards can do what Anthony ultimately did to us, and what a couple of the others threatened to do. So I'm more pleased than not pleased, I would say, particularly with the resilience shown in getting back in the game, and I think that's probably an appropriate moment to put Will and Rob on a pedestal there, because I think they played really, really well for us, and the fact that they combined for that moment was them getting their just rewards, I would say.
What makes it awkward?
I just think it's the unpredictability of the front players. They take big risks when you attack in the number of players that they leave ahead of the ball, and you've seen on a couple of occasions tonight when the ball turns over and they've left 3 or 4 forwards up that they're really threatening and often very ruthless in those occasions. And we showed a couple of clips from the away game against them where the game was that cliche of it being a basketball game, and it was back and forth and end to end and lots of space open in the middle of the pitch, and we really didn't want the game to be played that way tonight, and I think we did a relatively good job of that not being the case. But the moment that ultimately led to the goal was symptomatic of some of the problems we had tonight, I would say. Cheap turnovers in the middle of the pitch, and them being really well positioned to take advantage of some of the forwards' qualities, and none more so than Anthony, obviously, in that moment is very good in those situations. So it was a shame that we gave that opportunity up, but I think in the general balance of play we handled that fairly well, and not a classic performance, but there was a lot of good to it.
Of course, you just acquired USL Championship standout Mamadou Dieng from Hartford Athletic. He had a standout year the last 2 years. What do you see in him going forward, and how do you feel about his debut tonight?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure he had some time on the pitch, and he's obviously not someone who I'm sure we'll count on in the same way that we have done with Tanny up until this point, but certainly someone that has very similar characteristics, and I don't want to fall into the very lazy sort of comparison of them being completely like for like, but of course very similar athletic profile, similar profile in terms of the number 9 that they are, and certainly when Kelvin runs out of steam, then Momo will be a really good bet to come on and give us some energy in the way that he did tonight. And I think the moments that he was involved in play, he showed strength, athleticism, and I think that running power and the real hunger that comes with being a 21-year-old that spent 2 years in USL and is stepping up to play in MLS with 5 games to go in a team that's fighting for titles, that will help us for sure. So yeah, hopefully the last game for which we are as light as we are tonight, and we hope to welcome a couple of new players in the coming days and weeks, and fingers crossed we look a little fuller when we get to San Diego.
Eric, given some of the other results happening tonight, you guys clinch a playoff spot tonight. What does that mean for you guys to clinch it this early in the calendar, and what just a moment like this means for the club?
I think it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand, I think we've done phenomenally well to get to this point with 5 games to go, and to be in a position that we are, and I'm obviously very proud of the work that's gone into that, and I think we've exceeded everybody's expectations, but all the conversation has been about competing at the top end of the table and being in contention for trophies, and it hasn't been about resting on our laurels having qualified for the playoffs. So I think there's a minor relief, I would say, across the staff, because you can't help having that nagging doubt in the back of your mind, particularly with some of the stuff that's gone on this window and us facing a bit of an uphill battle, certainly for a couple of weeks. But I think the way we've handled that in over the last 3 games, Seattle last week and this tonight, I'm really proud of what we've been able to do there, because it's certainly not easy at this stage of the season, and to be in this position and still be looking upwards is phenomenal for us. So and as I say, that's why it's very nice to be able to go into this international break not having lost the game, feeling like we've taken a step forward and we're chipping away at the table, and with lots of good to the performance.
You sort of mentioned that you'll have potentially new players when the team hits the field again. Is it sort of a chance to take a breather and have sort of a new squad when you come back?
Well, it isn't in the sense that it's also an international break, and where we welcome a couple of players in, we also lose a good number of players. So it's not going to be the training camp that you'd almost hope to have at this stage of the season. We've obviously got some fairly important players leaving, and the build up to that San Diego game will be interesting for both teams, in the sense that I think they lose possibly up to 10. We lose a good number of players, and we will come back together as a group in San Diego on the Thursday before the Saturday, and we will have had some training time, hopefully, with the new guys, assuming all the paperwork gets done, and we're very hopeful that will give us a new lease of life, a fresh energy in the way that the players who came into the group last year did, and then we've got 5 games where every game we play is a winnable game. We're really capable of going on a run that sees us top come the end of the year, and that's the pressure that we'll put on ourselves.
Kelvin had 1 shot in 77 minutes. What was difficult getting him involved?
Yeah, obviously they change shape. They go to a back 5. I think that there was a lot of moments where we're attacking very light without the support around Kelvin. I think you've got 4 players in the middle there that want link and combine in Joaquin, Rob, Joe, and Will. And I think us at our worst in the first half, Kelvin's very isolated. I think where we do a better job, we've got better connections around him, and as a consequence, he gets a better look. But I think it's one of those performances where it's that combination of Kelvin having a hard look at his own performance, and us as a team having a look at how we can bring him to the game more, and making sure that around the box we've got really good connections, and we've got ways of making sure that he gets good quality chances, as opposed to the half chances, I would say, that he had tonight.
Thoughts on...
Sorry. Sorry.
Eric, real quick, back to the game, the match. Looking at the transition of the team throughout the match, it seemed there were moments where they were flat, and just wanted to get an idea, as we're fastly approaching playoffs, that sort of thing, what are some of the things you're thinking about the team can do differently?
I think over the course of the last 4 games, we've shown the various faces of us when we're at our best, but what we haven't done is combine that over the course of one single performance. I think you go back to Colorado at home, very dominant, created lots of chances, lots of territory, lots of really good opportunities around the box through very high level play. You then skip forward to the next 2, and I think we've shown the side of ourselves that we show most often this season, which is that very gritty, hard to beat, very good on set plays, very good counter-attacking team. And I think tonight we've shown elements of both, albeit I would say it was a 6-7 out of 10 performance. There was nothing to write home about at best, I would say. But I think it's also worth taking into consideration that Portland are a very good team with some very good players, and I would say across the front players, they've got more depth than any team in this division. So you always looked at this game as being a tricky one. You've seen last week they caused San Diego problems. San Diego weren't able to beat them, and between now and the end of the year they will cause other teams problems. So I think there, of course, were points at which we could look at ourselves and be really disappointed tonight, but as always, want to focus on what we can grab forward and take into the coming games, because as you point to, we are at a stage now where we're not going to become a different team in the coming 5 games. It is about being the best version of ourselves that we have been at various points this year, and I think if we can do a good job of that, then we'll find ourselves in a good place.
Andy had mentioned that Kelvin had just a single shot during his 70-plus minutes of play. On the other hand, Robin had 3 shots and scored. What do you think of Robin's performance and that goal?
No, he was excellent, and it's not lost on us, of course, that over this season, because of personnel and availability and the way the squad looks, we've ended up using Robin slightly out of position, and as a consequence, he's not as close to goal as he typically would be. And of course, Robin at his best is very creative, very good at unlocking, very good in front of goal. But I think the trade-off that we've made there, we found justified in the way he contributes to general play, the way he links, helps us in build-up, the strength that he shows in the middle, and I think that's often overlooked. It's not easy to spot on the eye, but the defensive contribution that he gives us is not like a typical number 10 that you drop down into a lower role. So I think the fact that last week he was able to, I think, is it the 4th season on the spin that he's been able to contribute 10 goal contributions, and tonight to have had that moment as well. I think there's some level of compensation for him, if that is a word. But tonight he was very, very good in the same way that Will was. And as I say, they've been phenomenal for us over the course of the year. And it seems to be that they need the goals to get the recognition. But over the course of this year, for sure, 2 of our most consistent, if not the most consistent players.
When it comes to that goal, what from a skill standpoint stood out to you most? Was it Will's pass, Robin's first touch, the finishing through contact, anything?
Yeah, no, it's a combination of the two, and I think Rob reads the state of the game really well at that point, and I think it's a stage at the game where we're talking about ways in which we can get Rob closer to the front, and ways in we had Owen Jen ready to come on, and obviously Rob is an incredibly intelligent footballer, reads that situation well, he finds himself on the last line, and Will was across a couple of moments today exceptional in terms of how he found that space in behind and showed that real high level quality from deep. And I think the fact that those two combined in that way, and then Rob showed the composure, the strength, the intelligence to cut across the defender, was a mark of what a good player he is there. So yeah, he hasn't had as much joy on account of the way in which the team's played this year in front of goal, but these moments are big for him and they're big for the club, and I think that over the course of this 6 games will hopefully amount to a really important point for us.
Obviously, qualifying for the playoffs with 5 games to go makes it a successful season, but conversely, there's been a number of sort of disappointing results against the other Western Conference playoff teams. Yeah. What do you sort of have to do to turn those losses and draws into wins?
Yeah, I think I think everyone would, I'm sure, who follows this team well and follows the club's evolution over the course of its existence, would point to the fact that we need to get stronger as a club. We need to have more depth. We need to have more options. We need to have more. We need to be at our fullest when it comes to our players who can come on and change games, because ultimately that's what the top teams do and the top teams have in this division. And that's of course only one side of it. I'm not pointing solely to individuals and personnel, but that is a big part of moving forward and being able to compete with the very top teams. I think what we've done a very good job of this year is, without being spectacular, without being absolutely dominant in every game in the way in which maybe other teams around us would hope to be and have been, we've done a very good job of grinding out lots of points through what I would say is a very effective playing style. Sometimes I feel we find ourselves at our limit in certain situations. Sometimes we can do better as a team. Sometimes I can do better as a coach in terms of finding solutions to unlocking teams. But I think it's a complex answer. There's a lot of layers to it, but we have taken big steps forward this year in comparison to last year, I would say, in that sense. And it's very difficult to get to this point, 30 odd games in, without losing back-to-back games, and I think that's almost our hallmark. We're able to show that level of resilience week in, week out, and I think tonight was a very obvious example of that. It's a team that knows how to stay in games, and I talk about this a lot because I think it's a remarkable stat. But for us to be the team that is losing least in games almost captures what we are a little bit. I think for us to be a team that is, I don't know, winning most in games and finding things comfortable, we really have to evolve as a club and a squad, and I'm sure there are designs to do that.
Thanks, everybody.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.